Hello, friends. My name is Mel Rose. I am an astrologer, tarot card reader, and Reiki practitioner living in beautiful Fayetteville, Arkansas, where I have my business Rose Tarot and Energy Services. And one of the fun things about living in Fayetteville right now is that we have this big total solar eclipse coming up on April 8th, and the zone of totality for that, it cuts across Mexico and the United States and a portion of Canada. You can see on my fun little map here. And it's going to cut right through the middle of Arkansas where I live. So if you see in the middle of the map there where it says OMG, I'm just a couple hours north of O. So I'll be at about 98% totality, but that is the zone of 100% totality. Is going to be a total solar eclipse, which we will not see in this area at least again until 2043. And so the region here is fairly abuzz with preparations. There have been talks of potential food shortages, gas shortages. In fact, there's definitely a shortage of places to stay in that zone of totality. If you were thinking about driving out to try and catch it, you probably would have wanted to make your plans by now. But that's what we're here to discuss. We're going to discuss the solar eclipse coming up on the 8th, but we're also going to discuss the lunar eclipse coming up this Monday, the 25th, and the intervening 2 weeks of astrology that relate to and culminate in that solar eclipse on April 8th. So starting with the lunar eclipse on the 25th, which is an eclipse in Libra. Libra is ruled by Venus. And then the following 2 weeks, I think it's interesting, are mostly Venusian aspects. It's mostly Venus having conversations with and interactions with other planets that's sort of moving on our sense of what we personally value, what we collectively value, what we find to be just, fair, balanced, and really secure for ourselves. And with that in mind, I'm also going to pull some tarot cards and give my fresh intuitive impressions. And I hope that you as watchers will also chime in the comments below with your intuitive impressions about the information that I pass along here, as well as I'm also going to have a little bit of political discussion about what's going on here in the States, in the news, just because it is so Venusian and it starts with Libra. So it really feels like this is about justice, and there's a lot of news in the sphere of justice right now. So thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for being here. Big thanks to Nadiya Shah and her team for this invitation to create a video. I really appreciate you all. And please like the video, subscribe to Nadiya Shah so that you will always have up-to-date astrological information. And you can follow me on Instagram at Rose Tarot and Energy Services, or on Meta at Rose Tarot and Astrology. So with all of that said, I'm going to go ahead and move on to day one of the eclipse season, which is Monday, March 25. That day we have a full moon and lunar eclipse in the sign of Libra. Now I'm in Arkansas. This is Central Standard Time for me. And so what's going to happen is that full moon culminates at 2 in the morning on Monday. So if you're wanting to stay up and see the culmination of this full moon and then that lunar eclipse, you're going to want to stay up Sunday night. If you're anywhere around where I live, you're going to stay up Sunday night, or just check for your local times, okay, to know when you can see that lunar eclipse unfold. So where I am, the full moon culminates at 2 a.m. And when the full moon is in Libra, we have very warm and loving hearts. We are really open to truth and beauty and elegance. We seek elegant solutions to our problems. We seek out harmonious environments and relationships to engage in. And we tend to notice, I think, what is out of balance in our relationships to the people, places, and things that we like, love, and can't get enough of. So, our tendency at that time is to sort of act on what feels out of balance and try to bring it back into balance. And in this time when we are in this time when we are approaching this lunar eclipse, it feels to me like what's out of balance is, or what's going to contribute to bringing us back into balance is not so much putting things on one side of the scale or another, but rather removing pressure or removing weight from situations so that we can bring things back into balance. And so for me, that full moon in Libra culminates at 2:00 in the morning on Monday morning. I'm going to stay up late Sunday night. And then the lunar eclipse begins around midnight. It will peak around 2:00 in the morning, and then it will be over around 4:30 in the morning. So, of course, again, check your local times. Here in Arkansas, I'm going to be watching the moon, the full moon go down while I watch that eclipse happen. And the impression that I get from the lunar eclipse being in Libra is really this feeling of being restless for justice, restless for a sense of balance at a time when things really tend to feel out of balance, and open to revelation, or open to new ideas, or open to new information that may come to us with the returning light and may hopefully restore a sense of justice and balance for us. There are also, we have justice in the news. On that day, March 25, that is the day that Donald Trump is supposed to have paid the city of New York some $500 million so that his properties, specifically Trump Tower, are not in danger of being sort of obfuscated by the state. So Letitia James is the attorney there that is prosecuting that case. She has the same birthday as my wife, which is 10/18. So she's a Libra, and it's interesting to me that this Libra is sort of being empowered, I think, during this full moon and lunar eclipse in Libra. It's an intense vibe because we've got the sun and moon in opposition to one another, so there's always a potential for conflict around that. And because that eclipse is happening so close to the South Node, we are releasing relationships to things that we once valued, but perhaps no longer serve a purpose for us. Debates and discussions online and in the news, there is lots of buzz. I feel like there will be a lot of information in the news that day, and I feel like we're getting some whispers of what's to come. And that brings me to the favorable aspects to Pluto. So when the sun is in that cooperative vibe, as it is here with Pluto, we are particularly determined and particularly driven. It's a more intense sense of determination and assertiveness at that time. And then the moon is speaking in what Nadiya likes to call supreme harmony with Pluto that day. So we have a much deeper intuitive capacity with that full moon and lunar eclipse in Libra. Please pay attention to your psychic impressions that day, especially that morning if you stay up to view the eclipse. And the tarot card that I have drawn for this one is the Justice Tarot card. Well, that makes sense because justice is a very Libran kind of theme. I don't know how well you can see this. There we go. The Justice Tarot card is a very Libra theme. It's about finding out the truth and seeking the answer that sort of makes sure that everybody gets what they deserve, right? Seeking balance in a situation. So that's the Justice card. The Justice card wants to know the facts. I feel like Letitia James has the facts and is prepared to do what she must with the power and the power and the duty that she has to bring justice in this situation with Donald Trump and the Trump organization in New York City. So justice will prevail, my friends, on the 25th. And I'm not saying that will necessarily happen. It's never happened before. that they just necessarily take somebody's high-rise tower away from them if they can't come up with their bond money. But it's interesting that that is a possibility, because there have been so many unusual things that happen in our politics and in our justice system over the past several years. And this is new stuff. This is really a source of shakeup, a source of surprise. We just don't know what's going to happen, and that's kind of exciting. But the fact that I got the Justice card here tells me I think that the institution of justice is going to prevail in this situation. Now, coming up the next day on March 26th is the day that the U.S. Supreme Court is hearing the Mifepristone case that has to do with women's access to health care and reproductive freedom. And they're gonna hear that case at 10 o'clock Eastern time here in the United States. And that's what I set this chart for, was 10 o'clock Eastern time in Washington, D.C., where it's going to be heard. So you can see that Mercury here is standing across the sky in opposition to the moon. And to me, that says that there is a potential for conflict sort of between the justice that we desire, that we perceive the need for, and the information that we're receiving. Mercury is in Aries. Sometimes the information that comes across a little heated. It comes across a little, it might tend to make us feel a little irritable or angry or a little more purpose driven even. So that's something to keep an eye on. Now, Venus is developing a cooperative aspect with Uranus, which it will complete in a couple of days. And that line crosses that opposition between the moon and Mercury. So it tells me that sort of hopeful optimism and a willingness to consider a new way of looking at things is definitely available to us, even as news is coming out that might cause us to get fired up or to worry as we hear the news come out from the public hearing of the Supreme Court on that Mifepristone case. And I just want to say, whatever you hear that day, it is not the final ruling, and it's also not the final word that we're going to hear on this issue, because Mercury is in the shadow. It's about to go retrograde. So we're going to revisit this a couple more times at least before we get to move on. And so with that said, I want to say that the card I have drawn here is the Five of Wands. And that looks a little bit like a fight and a battle. It looks like, a lot of people are sort of trying to gain ground or establish the supremacy of their idea or their way of doing things. It may seem a little messy, chaotic, and confused, but this is really just people putting in their arguments and having a discussion, probably a spirited discussion, possibly saying some fiery things, right? But everybody's hitting above the head here, okay? It's not like anybody is necessarily bound to get hurt in the moment, all right? And this is definitely a battle that has been going on for a long time in the United States. It's going to be something that we continue to disagree over for a while, but let's try to keep it a clean fight, okay, friends? And then coming up on March 28th, that's the day that Venus culminates that cooperative vibe with Uranus, and there is a very progressive emphasis that day on personal freedom and our relationship to the things that we value, the things that we like, love, and can't get enough of. And we can be a little bit surprised this day at how quickly things can change. Things that are unusual today might inspire us to act a little further down the line. And there's something surprising here, I think, that resonates in a certain way with what we value. And that brings up to me the news about this young non-binary student, Next Benedict, who lost their life in Oklahoma several weeks ago. Next Benedict's autopsy report is going to come out the day before this on March 27. And, hopefully, this is a pretty hopeful vibe. The card that I drew for it, that's not it. That's not it either. The card that I drew for this day is the Eight of Wands. And so it really feels like there's a little bit of a don't tell me what to do sort of vibe to this, which I think is very much in keeping with the themes around next Benedict's life and death. And sort of a desire for people to be able to go their own way, a desire for people to sort of hit the road and go the direction that they want to go. I see, information coming out and things really rolling forward in this case, in hopefully a very positive direction. Okay, and then on Monday, April 1st, here we have the midpoint between the lunar eclipse on Monday, the 25th, and the solar eclipse on Monday, April 8th. This is the day that Mercury goes retrograde. It's April Fool's, friends. And on April Fool's, Mercury is going retrograde. Okay, so Mercury's in Aries. This tends to be a kind of speedy, impatient, restless Mercury. You know, Mercury tends to accelerate things anyway. It's the speed of thought. And then in Aries, Aries lends us a lot of fire and drive and initiative. It kind of tends to give Mercury a little heat, a little more speed. So this feels like, going retrograde, it feels like sort of screeching tires as we're taking a curve too fast on the road or something, right? So our plans can take a sudden turn. I want us to slow down and follow through with this Mercury retrograde, especially on the day when it turns. We can be a little bit speedy and impatient when Mercury is in Aries anyway. And then with it going retrograde, it's just going to be important to really check our details and make sure that we are, make sure that we have our plan lined out. Maybe make sure that you've read the whole contract, that kind of thing, before you rush into anything. Okay, slow down and follow through. And with that, today I have pulled the Fool card. And that seems really appropriate because it is April Fool's. And I just want to say, this brings to mind that we want to be aware of missed and misleading connections and communications as Mercury is going retrograde on the first day of April, okay? Perhaps the person you've been reaching out to isn't getting back to you. You might want to try another channel because when Mercury goes retrograde, we do struggle a little bit with our technology and our communication devices. And also, it's important just to be really patient. And here's the thing. As an Aries, I know that sometimes people think you're being impatient when you're really being very patient. Right? And this is a very fiery Aries vibe. There's a lot going on in Aries right now. So we might be feeling impatient. We might be really trying to practice patience. We want to be conscious about it and really just, try to slow down and sort of check ourselves before we wreck ourselves. Okay. Also, that day there is a waning half moon in Capricorn. That is, the waning moon is a time when we are letting go of things, when we are releasing stuff into the world. And Capricorn is really about effort. It's about the work we're willing to do to get the nice things we want to have. So the vibe I get with this waning half moon in Capricorn is sort of to stop working so hard as something that isn't working for us, or stop working so hard as something that isn't worth it. Sometimes it takes an effort to stop making such an effort at something once we realize it's sort of it's an uphill battle with no end in sight. So just be really aware of that and be willing to think about sort of putting something down, especially, with Mercury going retrograde in Aries. If you feel like you have a lot on your plate or you're trying to speed through a lot of things to get everything done, it might be a good time to just sort of deprioritize some stuff, set it to the side, and let it go. And then coming up on April 3rd, Venus joins Neptune. This is going to be the conjunction of Venus and Neptune in Pisces just a day before Venus moves on into Aries. So Venus is meeting up with Neptune. Venus in Pisces is exalted, and Neptune is the modern ruler of Pisces. So, and these two get along pretty well. So it's a really connected vibe. I can see perhaps the potential for some spiritually relatable messages coming through, either intuitively or just, in the conversations that we're having and the stuff that we're dealing with. And also, it's an opportunity that day to fall in love with a dream. But, friends, don't be deceived, okay? We want to be really careful about the choices that we're making on a day like today, because while it feels very nice, while what it is that we're doing, the things that we're choosing from, the choices that we're making feel very nice, there is always the potential for a little bit of fogginess, a little bit of misperceived circumstances with that Neptune in Pisces being activated by a Venus conjunction. This is our personal values and our sense of connection to the whole wide world combined and under pressure. So we want to be careful about the choices that we're making. And also what comes to mind for me for this, as far as the news goes, is, the compassion that we feel for people who are in terrible circumstances around the world. Specifically, what comes to mind is what's happening in Gaza right now. The genocide is really a soul-crushing kind of event for a lot of us to see those people suffering the way they are, and our hearts go out to them, but we have a little bit of confusion perhaps, or we're just not clear on what it is that we can do to be helpful. Definitely keep those people in their hearts, in your heart, and contribute to their well-being where you can, okay? And then the next day that comes up of significance is April the 4th. That is the day that Venus is moving on into Aries. And let me tell you, Venus in Aries, I have Venus in Aries in my chart, so I understand it pretty well. It is a very assertive, kind of sexy and bold way of loving and connecting with people. It can be a little impatient and restless. This is not the most comfortable position for Venus, okay? Venus was just in Pisces, where she is exalted. That's where she loves to be. That's where she is operating, sort of at her highest frequency. When she moves on into Aries, this is sort of a push and pull, because Venus likes to sort of receive. Venus is open to things, and Venus draws things in. But in Aries, it's really a tendency to be more assertive, to go in pursuit of the things that you desire. It's a little bit of a more of a Martian Venus, right? So for that day, this is a quest to fulfill our values. And for that day, I have pulled the Chariot. I love this Chariot in the Modern Witch Tarot deck. This person looks like they're ready to get on the road and get going. They are on a quest, and it's a quest with a higher purpose. Okay, it's not just like I'm going out to have some fun, or I'm going out to the store to go shopping. This is really taking seriously our goals and ambitions, and sort of cutting out all distractions, all of the things that we would normally allow ourselves to fritter away our time and our efforts. We're cutting those things out, and we're just driving toward our goal. And with Venus in Aries, I wouldn't be surprised this day in the news if we see something, if we see some action on the justice front. And I don't know in what realm that will be, but definitely in terms of justice, in terms of equality, and in terms of personal and collective security, we are collectively and hopefully individually all driving toward a stronger sense of what our values are and what our goals are, individually and together. Okay, and so after that comes the big day, Nope, not the big day. The second to the big day, April 6th, which is on Saturday before that big solar eclipse. That is the day that Venus gets into this cooperative vibe with Pluto. And Venus and Pluto working together, this is deep love. This is profound feeling and emotion and attachment and desire for connection. So it's a desire bordering on obsession. It can be like there's something there that we want, whether that be justice or security or love, attention, affection, regard, anything that it is that we desire that is kind of obtainable, but just out of reach, right? It feels like it's far away. So Venus and Aries will tend under these circumstances, I think, to make some power moves. And Venus power moves can be a little bit intense because, like I said, Venus is not totally comfortable in Aries, but that doesn't mean that she won't take action, right? So the thing about Venus power moves, about a Venus and Aries power moves especially, which I can speak to, is that sometimes when we want to make a power move, it comes across as a little bit aggressive or demanding. And there's a call there to sort of have a little bit more patience with people, places, and things that we value. They might get an impression of us that we're pushing too hard for something, and that will cause pushback. So we want to be very patient and forgiving with others while we go in pursuit of those things that we value, because in the end we all get a choice as to what we spend our time and what we invest our heart in, our heart, our love, our joy, our enthusiasm, what kind of emotional investments that we make in the people, places, and things around us. And for this I pulled the Lovers. The Lovers is really about having your choice, but it's also about that temptation when it comes to something that you really do love, or someone that you really do love. When you make a fresh connection, sometimes there's that temptation to be distracted by it. There's that temptation to sort of not worry about any of your other responsibilities because you really just want to spend your time in relationship with this one person, place, or thing that you've discovered is a very intense feeling for you. So that's Venus sextile to Pluto. That's the falling deep in love. That's the feeling a little bit obsessed about someone or something. And, I think that what comes up for me in terms of what might be in the news at that time is perhaps a little bit of misleading or misguided information coming out of any number of the news stories that we hear in the United States. It does bring me a lot of the time. This one is bringing me back to sort of the Ukraine and Russia conflict and how we never really have straight answers, especially about what's going on the Russian side of that conflict. And so there is a little bit of for some people, there's a little bit of a very powerful focus on that situation and how we like things to go. And at the same time, there's a little bit of deception. We're not really always just very clear about what's happening there. So we want to be careful about the choices that we're making right now, because sometimes the things that we're saying and doing to try to bring about justice, to try to bring about a sense of security, we're doing them under sort of a false understanding, and we don't want to, we don't want to mistakenly make choices that will lead us astray, that'll lead us down a path that we can't return from very easily, shall we say. Okay, and then after that is the big day, April 8th. That is the new moon and solar eclipse in Aries. Okay, so there you can see the red circle at the top of the chart there in Aries. There are a whole bunch of placements in Aries right now, okay? It's the sun and moon, it's Mercury and Venus. The North Node is there, Chiron is there. At that time, the midheaven is there as well. So when that solar eclipse is happening, we are going to really be feeling the Aries vibes. It is a lot of fire, a lot of drive, a lot of initiative. Okay, Aries is the fire starter. Aries is the direct, the motivational force. It is the warrior that just moves forward according to their goals and takes care of one thing and gets it out of the way and then gets another goal and goes forward again. And also, while the sun is conjunct the moon for that new moon, and in a solar eclipse, it's also going to conjunct with Chiron, which is known to be the wounded healer in mythology. Chiron has a lot of know-how. Chiron is a teacher. He taught Hercules and a number of other ancient heroes their archery skills as well as their medicinal skills. So this has a feeling to me like something's going to happen, something's going to come out in the news or in our awareness that just spurs us into action. Like we now have clarity, we have the information, the know-how we need, and we have this very renewed and strengthened sense of purpose as the sun's light returns that afternoon. So that's big news for us, especially if you have strong Aries placements like I do. I have Sun and Venus and Chiron in Aries. So so I'm having a lot of returns at this time as it is. And I know that I'm not alone in this. If you are an Aries or if you have fire sign placements, especially, this is going to be sort of a high fuel kind of day, a really kind of hyped up, assertive feeling kind of day. And for some of us, that really does sort of hype us up and it makes us feel very highly energetic. For others of us, it tends to drain us. Having all of that energy in Aries, having all that attention on sort of our place in the sky, really can feel like so much is going on that we feel tired and we feel drained and we just have to cool it. Okay, so here's the thing about being a fire sign or being a fiery person in the world is that when you're hot, and when you're not, you're not. So, in Tarot, the fire signs are represented with lizards, among other things. And lizards are a great example of fiery people or fiery circumstances, because really it is like when things are cool, then the lizard is not in motion. And then it goes out and suns itself on a rock, it heats up, and then it gets active. Okay, so if you feel like being active that day, please go ahead and be active. Although I wouldn't go out of my way on the day of the eclipse to have any unplanned adventures. Okay, if you're planning an adventure, make sure it's a planned adventure or it's something that you have done before, so you feel familiar with it. I wouldn't be starting anything new that day, at least until after the eclipse, but maybe the next day. And then the other thing I want to say is, if you're not feeling it, okay, even if you have planned activities that day, if you're not feeling it, if you feel like there's so much intensity and buzz in energy, and there is a lot of intensity, there's a lot of placements right on top of each other here in Aries. If you're feeling like that is overwhelming, like you're feeling overstimulated or there's too much to do, I really recommend, again, deprioritizing some things and allowing yourself to chill out like a lizard in the shade, if that's what you want to do. And with that returning light of the eclipse, we're going to have a little more, I think, clarity, and I think we're going to have a lot more information and a lot more sense of initiative and drive going forward from there. And there's really positive stuff coming up after that. But don't forget all of the things that we've been talking about that are in the news that have to do with world politics or American politics or just American system of justice and security. All of those things. What do I want to say about this? All of those things are going to be things that we can act on the next day. Okay, eclipses do bring a little bit of a chaotic vibe. It doesn't necessarily have to be negative, and it doesn't have to be positive. It's just a little shakeup of a vibe. So, that's why I would say no unplanned activities, and definitely just not going out into the world and doing things that sort of invite chaos to give us problems, right? And the card I drew for this day couldn't be more perfect because it is the Emperor. The Emperor is sort of the definition of Aries in the tarot. It is an Aries card. You can see this Emperor has ram's horns and an ankh there, which is a symbol of the sun. So very appropriate for the day of the solar eclipse, and it's a very empowered and empowering card. This is sort of a day when perhaps we take command, or we realize what it is that we have command of, and we get an idea like in what direction we intend to expand, and what choices that need to be made, what actions need to be made in order for that personal and collective expansion to happen. So this does feel like a very martial card. The Emperor is the head of a military, right? And sort of the king of all the kings in an area, so in an empire. So there is a martial quality to this card. There's a martial quality to this day because there's so much going on in Aries, and there's a martial quality to the world these days. Anyway, there is so much war and conflict happening. The United States is involved in a lot of it in different ways, and we all have different sort of feelings and ideas about those things. But don't be surprised if you see some sparks and some fire and some maybe even starts and initiative in martial or wartime situations out there in the world on the 8th, surrounding the 8th, after the 8th. With that said, there are very positive things that can happen with the astrology that's coming up in this eclipse season, and with the eclipse with the astrology that's coming up beyond the eclipse season. Just about a week or so later after that solar eclipse, Jupiter is going to conjunct Uranus, and to me, so we're already within range of that conjunction, and when that happens, the vibe I'm getting from it is really something where we are not going to be very patient about restrictions that are laid on us at this time. Perhaps there will be new rules that we're not very happy with, or perhaps it just feels as though we are constrained in ways that we're not interested in being constrained anymore, because we want growth, we want expansion personally and collectively. We want things to improve, we want things to get better, we want everybody to sort of be supported and cared for and get the things that they need, and we don't want limitations or restrictions to be placed on that. And that's really going to be a driving theme over the next couple of weeks, so I wanted to let you know about that. And I think that's all I have to say about the upcoming eclipse season. I truly appreciate your presence for this video. If you made it this far, I thank you so much for listening. Please put 3 sparkling star emojis in the comments below to let me know that you saw this through to the end. Thanks again to Nadiya Shah and her crew for inviting me to make this video. Thank you again for listening, and I'll look forward to reading your comments.